Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha TV. You're watching Discussion Today with me, Tina Jha. Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Tuesday inaugurated the Maritime India Summit 2021. Speaking on the occasion, he said India is very serious about growing in the maritime sector and emerging as a leading blue economy of the world. Through the focus areas of upgradation of infrastructure, boosting reform journey, India aims to strengthen the vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat. The Prime Minister said his government has widened the ambit of the maritime sector by renaming the Ministry of Shipping as the Ministry of Ports, Shipping and Waterways so that work happens in a holistic manner. He added that there is increased focus on the domestic shipbuilding and ship repair market as well. Outlining the priorities of his government in the maritime sector, the Prime Minister also invited the world to come to India and be a part of India's growth trajectory. So on Discussion Today, we will be analyzing the growth potential of India's maritime sector, the focus areas that will help India grow as a leading blue economy, and how to boost investment in this particular sector. Joining me on the program are two very special guests. Let me introduce them to you. We are joined by former Ambassador Gurjeet Singh and Dr. Ram Upendra Das, Head Centre for Regional Trade. Welcome, gentlemen, on this edition of Discussion Today. Ambassador, let me begin the program today with you. So while inaugurating the Maritime Summit today, the Prime Minister said India is very, very serious about growing in the maritime sector and emerging as a leading blue economy of the world. First of all, help us and our viewers understand what does blue economy mean for India? What is its significance for a country like ours?
You know, when the UN Law of the Sea was announced, the rights to the continental shelf and the exclusive economic zone were given to every country. And a country like India, which has a very large coastline, therefore acquired many rights in the ocean. But from the time when this law was passed in 1982, we haven't done very much except do offshore oil drilling. But now that the world is growing more rapidly and there is a greater demand for resources and food, there is much that can be done in the oceans which can contribute to national growth. Now, in this, besides the hydrocarbons, there are, natural resources in the sea. There is the fish resources. So many countries actually depend, and many people on our coastline, for instance, depend on good fishing practices, which will increase their catch and consequently their return. So therefore, the blue economy symbolizes how do you use the ocean and your exclusive economic zone to assist your growth by bringing in economic benefits. Attached to this is the issue of maritime security, which we can come to in a short while.
Sure. Dr. Das, coming to you on talking about the blue economy. So when we say that we want to emerge as a leading blue economy of the world, what are the initiatives that the government of India has undertaken in the last few years, and what more needs to be done towards realizing this dream?
So you have to see this whole concept of blue economy when you refer to Indo-Pacific. Mm-hmm. And this actually takes us back to the geography of Indian subcontinent, South Asia at large, which connects the Arabian Sea, Indian Ocean, Bay of Bengal, and Pacific. And the geography of this peninsula is such that historically India has been an integral part of trade connectivity as well as cultural connectivity, and people traveled across the west and the east via the South Asian region. It is in this context that the blue economy concept becomes very relevant, and as Ambassador Singh was mentioning, it encompasses a sector like fisheries, petroleum. There are various natural resources, mineral resources within the sea and ocean. And also the blue economy is a concept which integrates India, which is already embarked on the vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat, connecting it with the rest of the world through the ocean economy, through the blue economy. So to say, in this paradigm, the shipping links and anything which is related to shipping segment, be it ports or inland waterways, which is domestic, and shipping lines, which is international, actually is nothing but leveraging the blue economy to connect a self-reliant economic powerhouse that India is going to become when it becomes 5 to 10 trillion economies in near future, but not remaining isolated, insulated, and autarkic, but engaging with the world with a position of strength. And that is where the blue economy, apart from the fact that it is going to be focusing on environmental issues. So the blue economy has a lot of connotations for the green economy, so to say. This is going to put India on a global economic map, not to undermine the security implications of blue economy in the Indo-Pacific.
So in that aspect, Ambassador, which are the focus areas that needs to be worked upon? Which areas require more attention from the government?
I think the Prime Minister in his speech was rather clear. He spoke about the development of ports. India has a large number of large ports, but also small ports. So I think development of ports and making their operation more efficient. Now, this is a part of overall trade facilitation. And trade facilitation means if you have faster trade turnovers, then your connectivity actually means much more sense, as Dr. Das said. The second part is, I think Dr. Das pointed out, the inland waterways. They also need to be synergized with movement because these can be energy efficient and more green and bring you faster connectivity down our major rivers. Another area I think which we need to do is our shipbuilding.
Yes.
We have many shipbuilding yards and they are doing smaller ships, but more and more they are coming in to do bigger ships. But I think this is where we need to put our stamp and become more efficient. And this related to this is the fact that India has the largest number of seafarers in the world. The number of people employed in the shipping industry who are Indian, but not necessarily on Indian ships, is extremely large. Now, that is a consequence of the blue economy, but something that we need to harness so that they get employment on Indian flagged vessels and
Yes.
get employed in Indian related businesses. And I think these I would say would be the four major areas.
Okay. Dr. Das, Ambassador Singh mentioned shipbuilding, and that is one area that the Prime Minister also spoke about. Shipbuilding perhaps is one of the weakest links in India's maritime aspirations. Some steps have been taken in recent years, as have been mentioned by the Prime Minister in his speech during the Maritime Summit. But what kind of impetus is needed to further encourage shipbuilding in the country?
The first and foremost is investment, and the kind of magnitude that shipbuilding, ship repair and maintenance, etc., warrants. It is very difficult for to undertake such humongous activity with the help of domestic private investment, and therefore the role of foreign direct investment in this area, especially from countries who have had rich experience in terms of shipbuilding and maintenance and having multiple uses of that, and the entire scientific marine engineering which goes into dredging and mapping of the yards, etc. All that would be very crucial. And in this, there is an institution called Indian Register of Shipping, which actually provides certificates in ship designing. With Siemens, they have had a design center. So I think the international collaboration and learning from the international best practices would be very important, not only for the financial resources, but also because of the managerial resources that also accompany with foreign direct investment and also the know-how, which is technology. So this is going to be very, very crucial in my view, because this endeavor is something which is big, And today, Prime Minister has also launched a e-book on the vision of Maritime 2030, which is going to, in a way, help the global audience to understand what India's policy is relating to port, shipping, and inland waterways.
Absolutely. So investment is something that Dr. Das pointed out, and we'll talk about how we can increase investment in this particular sector. But if you could help us understand, Dr. Das, what are the challenges when we talk about shipbuilding? And of course, it is one of the weakest links we know. What are the challenges that this particular sector faces? So what are the gaps that need to be filled apart from the investment part?
As I mentioned, that the biggest challenge is in terms of the financial resources, because it's a segment where the quantum of resources and the gestation lag in terms of lock-in period of the resources is also quite long. And therefore, combining both the quantum and the long gestation period of materializing such a humongous project would require long-term commitment from international community and the corporates and multinational companies, whereby they need to be very clear on two things. One is the policy stability, where we will have to focus, because that is one area where global investors have to be always very wary about. And the second is the kind of ease of doing business that we provide, the facilitation to investments and their businesses that operate within our territory in the area of shipbuilding. So if we can focus on policy stability and much better ease of doing business for foreign investors in the area of shipbuilding, I think we would have got not only financial resources, but also technology, managerial practices, etc.
Okay, Ambassador Singh, so when we talk about strengthening financial resources, what is the best way forward? How can we bring in more and more money into this sector?
So, this is one of the neglected sectors in India. Ports and shipping were not taken so seriously. In fact, we were quite content to let shipping slip away. In the old days, when there were contracts, for instance, to export iron ore, the shipping was supposed to be divided or given priority to India. But by and by, we let these principles fall and we said, okay, let the other shippers take it, we have no. But today, I think we are back in the game. Now, you rightly asked, how do you fund it? Now, do you know in the continent of Africa, China is building nearly 40 ports and the Japanese are doing about 4. Now, India is not in that big game. So I want to put it to you that if we acquire expertise in building and managing ports by itself is a good business, which you can manage ports overseas and do them. There are hundreds of Indians who manage ports overseas, but they don't work for Indian companies. So we have the know-how, but not the aptitude. So what should we do? So I personally think right now we have a Japan, India, Australia trilateral discussion on strategic and resilient value chains. I think shipbuilding and running ports should be a part of that resilient value chain, because if we have shipbuilding in India, you will generate employment.
Yes.
And we can do that with the help of Japanese and Australian technology and investments. Also with the Republic of Korea. The second part is ship breaking, which is very important because there's so many large ships which are running out of the line, is also a big business. Now, about 20 years ago, when this became business, India stepped up. And I think we are still the leading ship breaker in Alang in Gujarat.
Yes.
But I think we need to do this more, because that, again, is a little bottom of the pyramid, but it creates jobs. So a more robust attitude towards shipbuilding, but doing it in a sustainable manner is extremely important. And the third is the development of human resources. Naval architecture is not a subject which is taught in too many places, except 1 or 2 IITs, I think. We have a National Maritime University in Chennai, which is very popular among developing countries. But I think we need to raise this, because if you can get more international exposure to young people who study the maritime issues, including the blue economy, I think we will be able to provide the human content into a large amount of blue economy activity emerging in the world.
Absolutely. And another area that we need to work upon, and that was rightly put forth by the Prime Minister, is marine tourism. And in this context, the Prime Minister did mention that India has as many as 189 lighthouses across its vast coastline. The government has drawn up a program for developing tourism in the land adjacent to 78 lighthouses. So, Dr. Das, there is no doubt we need to harness the potential in maritime tourism. But how do we make people aware is the first question.
So what you need to do is, we already have an Incredible India program, which focuses on tourism. And today, in the age of social media, combined with electronic and print media, you would have greater avenues to sensitize people to avail of some of these avenues which are opening up in terms of tourism. So, for instance, coastal cruise tourism is something that you would know that the Caribbean cruise has been, well known. The Singaporean cruise, everybody knows. But it is high time that, we have cruise tourism. There can be variants of that. You can link different spots on the coastal areas of India's maritime boundary itself through cruise tourism, which can be, domestic, but you can also have international. So, for instance, I remember having discussions with Maldives. We were working on that in terms of ferry and cruise tourism between India and Maldives. On the other hand, very recently we have signed a free trade agreement with Mauritius just a few days back, which is in the Indian Ocean and with large Indian community present there. It would be worthwhile to explore cruise tourism between Mauritius and India. Yes. Thirdly, on the west side, you also have a long, boundary of Africa. So that is another area where one can, explore. On the eastern side, many people do not realize that Indonesia and India are only 70, 80 kilometers away from each other if you take our last island this side and the first island of Indonesia on that side. And therefore, Southeast Asia is there where India can also embark upon an international cruise tourism. So what I'm trying to say is that tourism both across the locales that are sprinkled across the coastal areas within the domestic sector, as well as some of these international linkages would be a game changer. Why do I say game changer? Because tourism is a force multiplier. Yes. Because whichever place, tourism rises, that becomes a force multiplier in terms of increasing GDP growth, because you will require more places to stay, you will require more vehicles to transport people, you will have more restaurants and eating joints, you will require more ATMs, banking services, and n number of handicrafts, local culture. So many things actually start springing up and get a lease of life through tourism, whereby different localities within our country can prosper, and we don't have to look anywhere else, but become locally sustained, self-reliant just through tourism, whereby we can utilize social media and print and electronic media to sensitize people.
And it is also going to be beneficial when it comes to regional trade.
Exactly. And I wanted to mention that the emphasis of 3 T's on trade, technology, and tourism. These 3 T's are an integral part of this entire maritime vision of 2030, in my view, which integrates or imbibes the concept of blue economy as well. And it has important implications for our space program. Already the satellites that we have, the kind of mapping that they are doing the tracking of our ship vessels across, seas. It is going to help us in our security, anti-piracy programs, and also in terms of the sheer logistics of trade, as you very rightly said, in the South Asian region, and also connecting with the West Asia and Southeast Asia, or both sides of the Indian subcontinent.
Yes. Ambassador Singh, so of course, with a vast coastline of nearly 7,500 kilometers, we have a unique maritime, we are in a very unique maritime position. There are so many maritime tourism landmarks. The need is to harness the potential to the maximum. So you want to add anything to what has already been said by Dr. Das?
I think Dr. Das has been very comprehensive. But I must say that it's very important that the Prime Minister has highlighted this. Because, you know, in my younger days, there used to be actually a shipping service between the Andamans and Chennai. It doesn't exist anymore. And even in the old days, there were, ships which ran between the Nicobar Islands and Aceh province of Indonesia. They don't run anymore, except for some fledgling efforts. So this revival of this idea by putting thought into it is extremely important. And in India, beach tourism having taken off, I think cruise tourism will be nearby. But to me, one of the critical factors in all this is maritime security, which deals with issues like preventing pollution on the high seas, preventing piracy, terrorism, money laundering, drug running, and more important, providing humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. And this is an area where India has acquired expertise and respect in our Indo-Pacific region over the last decade.
Okay, so when you talk about maritime security, do you think that in the pursuit of becoming a blue economy, a maritime economy, India could transform itself into a maritime power as well?
Yes, so I'll give you an example. For instance, I said fisheries. Now, fisheries are very important. Let's say the world's largest archipelago country is Indonesia. But do you know that they have the world's largest fishing areas, but almost the world is fishing in their areas, but not them, because they don't have enough fishing trawlers. Now, if we have upgraded fishing boat manufacturing industry, we can join them together and have more fishing trawlers, which will then catch fish, which our own fishermen will be able to use. At the moment, they are losing out because certain countries have more efficient trawlers who come and take away much of the fish, leaving very little to coastal fishing. So I think their upgradations are required to play the role of a fishing power. And where food security is concerned, fisheries is going to play a critical role in the years ahead. So it is not only just a resource, it is actually an agricultural food resource which we need to look at. And to protect that, we need to deal with illegal and undeclared fishing, which often depletes a country of its own resources.
Yes. So absolutely, the maritime sector in India has huge potential. The need of the hour is to, of course, harness the potential to the maximum. And in that regard, several suggestions have been made by our distinguished panelists. Thank you to both of you for joining us on the program today, sharing your thoughts with us on how to revive this sector, how to, take this sector further so as to help Indian economy grow in multiple ways. Thank you once again to both of you for joining us on the program. So that's it from us on this edition of Discussion Today. We'll be back same time tomorrow with another topic and a different set of panelists as well. Thank you for your time.